Hello, everybody. Welcome to this WebEx. Beautiful day today, and after 1 week of trying out what you learned last week during the WebEx IP edit, we are now going to show you the AZedit software that RTS is offering with the equipment. And on the right side of me, for you on the left, is Sven Bindels, our field support, and he's going through all the settings in AZedit. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A session. We will answer them after the training, and we will go in details. No problem. Whatever question you have, just ask me. So, thank you very much for joining, and it's up to you, Sven.
Okay, so thank you and welcome everyone. I hope to have a successful webinar like last week. Indeed, as Nico said, today is about AZedit. AZedit is our program for programming the intercom and also the functionality of all the products. And I would like to guide you through the first steps of how to make a basic programming in this. I opened it completely fresh, completely new install, also a new install of a frame. So we have a completely new situation that you might come across in the field. So when you open AZedit for the first time, it will tell you that it's not able to connect to intercom, and it will join, or it will start with a file mode. A file mode means that it's offline, and you can already pre-program things offline, allowing you to store it on your computer or even to a USB stick to eventually upload it to an intercom. So it's not always mandatory to work in the online mode. So the other dialog window that pops up is that there is no network interface selected for discovering the control port or the master controller of your frame. It's the same as the discovery in the IP edit that I have displayed or shown last week, where you say, yes, I would like to configure an interface at this moment, at the first install. It brings you automatically to the preferences of this program. And in preferences, discovery tab, you can select the interface you're going to use. In my case, there is only one interface because I have no Wi-Fi or something like that in this PC. But if you're using a laptop, from time to time, you can also see a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or some other interfaces of your PC listed here. So once you selected the interface you're going to use, you can limit the discovery to local. You can also use fully qualified device names. These are exactly the same options as we have discussed last week in the IP edit session. So I'm not going to explain these in full detail like last week. But right now we have set it to use this interface and connect to an intercom.
By the way, something additional for the people that are watching this. Last week we made a video. It will be published quickly on YouTube, so you can go through it. And also this training will be recorded and we'll present it on YouTube later on. So you're not going to miss anything. And if you want to see things back, that's also possible. Okay?
Yep. So once we have set the interface, you can see that you are running it for the first time, and the recommendation is to visit the menu and select options and communications to configure a communication or connection to your intercom. Okay, so that is also what we are going to do. In options, communications, we can then select our methodology to connect to our frame. In very older frames, we can connect by serial or USB, but also now we can connect by network to the master control of ADAM or ADAM, or even Odin or OMS. If we select the browse button the three dots over here, you do a discovery, and we can see all devices listed that are discovered by the software. Once we selected one, you can see a couple of them here. You can see the IP address, you can see the frame type, and you can also see if someone else is already connected to it, because we can see connection numbers. 10 out of 10 available means there are 10 possible connections to this frame. It doesn't mean there are 10 connected to it. That means there are 10 available. So we select, for example, Odin. It's a complete new frame, as I already said. Right now I said, okay, it tries to connect, and we can see on the right button, we can see a RX and a TX with the frame. We can see Odin is selected, but we are still in file mode, which means we are still working in offline mode. We are not yet connected. If we go to online, we have a connect button. The other option is, as many of you have already, the standard toolbar and the standard navigation bar. We have a connect icon on the top here as well. So if you don't have the toolbar or the standard bar, you can use online connect. Okay, so once we are connected, we can see that because this is a new install, it's going to ask me if the application shall be set to default. I can say yes or no. However, this is a completely new install, so it doesn't make a change right now. If it's a completely new install with AZedit, but not a new frame, then you don't need to change the application defaults, or the other way around. When you have a new AZedit install, but not a new frame. So we press OK. Then, as we are connected for the first time, it will ask you something about authentication, and it explains also why we do pop up with an authentication table, and that's because of a California law. You can edit an authentication table, which is not recommended because you can lock yourself out easily. It's recommended to use a restriction editor program, which is another program we supply, where you can program usernames and passwords, but also permissions to users. Nevertheless, if you say, okay, it's a very small install, you can add a username and password here, but please note that you must really remember this. In ADAM and ADAM, you can easily reset, in Odin, you can easily set it. Same for OMS, because we have a display on the frame, but ADAM and ADAM don't have a display on it, so it's more complicated to reset it. In this case, we will disable the authentication because we're only using one PC and it's a demonstration at the moment. And we are now connected. We can see that on the right button. We can see online. We can see that only one user is on one user is online, and we can see already an alarm, possibly because there is only one one power cable connected. So there is no redundant power cable to this Odin. Nevertheless, this is your startup screen. Right now we are connected for the first time. And before we even start programming keys or something like that, I would like to explain a little bit about the intercom. Because once it's a fresh install, you must do the intercom configuration. In the intercom configuration, we can program how many keys we have, how many frames we have, how many party lines, IFBs, and so on we actually need. Of course, I get the question often, why don't we set everything to maximum? Because if we put everything to maximum, the speed of the processing also calculates on maximum. That means if I configure that I will probably use 999 party lines and so on of everything else, all those resources will take a lot of time in the configuration file, in pushing a new activation of a configuration, and so on. So how smaller your resources are, how faster the system is in terms of configuration, loading files, saving files, and so on. Okay. Right now everything is grayed out. We cannot program anything because this is disabled at the moment in AZedit, and the same for options. The reason why it's disabled is because in these resources and options, if you open it when you enable the option to modify something, you will lose the entire configuration. So it's therefore important to know how to save your configuration, and also if you make changes to load it back afterwards. So let's move in there. We go to preferences, we go to advanced, and we allow intercom resizing in online mode. We can also allow reset configuration, which is like first birthday or factory default. Once you configure this, and we go back to the intercom configuration, it gives you the warning that any change you will make here will erase the online intercom setup. And that is what I just have explained as well. So once you have an existing setup, you must store it on your PC first. As this is a new install or new frame, we can just make modifications here without any harm. And we can configure the maximum numbers of resources. Please know that if we enter too much, for example, 9,999 party lines, which doesn't exist, and you press test, you get an error telling you what the maximum number of that resource is. So for the maximum party lines, it's 999. But as I just explained, if you program all the resources to maximum, the system will react slower because it consumes or it expects so many resources. We don't need so many party lines, so we program it slightly less and we do a test. And we can see that the test is successful, it's all fine, and we can apply and continue. In case you are using an Odin interconnected to multiple Odins, you need to do an intercom sizing wizard. The sizing wizard will allow you to program other frames. And with this, you can program the ports per frame as well, and which frame is handling which amount of ports. If this is all correct, you get back to this main screen, press test, and it all works. Of course, after applying, especially when you did sizing wizard changes, the intercom is reconnected. And we can see this on the bottom here on the right. We can see it's only transmitting, not receiving anymore. And we must wait till it's reconnected. There is a chance that it's not reconnected automatically. This is one of the options in preferences that you can enable. So let's have a look if it's reconnecting. Communications, it's still booting up because it's not there yet. Let me have a look. It should pop up any minute. Sometimes I'm very impatient. I'm sorry for that. Oh. Well, that is a good question. The answer is yes and no at the same time. The answer yes, because ADAM and ADAM is designed to be serial connected. However, the master control card also comes with a default IP address. So when you have the master control connected for the first time, and for example, you connect your laptop directly to the master control, you will discover that it's working in auto IP addressing or in 192.168.0 something range. The IP address, default IP address of the master control is listed in the manual as well. But if you encounter troubles with that, you can always reach out to the field engineering. Right now I can see, sorry, right now I can see 2 dots. I can see Odin is detected, it's connecting, but I'm still in file mode, so I must connect. I get exactly the same request because I did a intercom configuration and the capabilities have changed because of that. Okay, so before we even move on, I would like to express one more thing in preferences. In the startup and shutdown, we have auto connect at startup, which means that the next time you try to boot up AZedit, it automatically connects to the last frame it remembered. In this case, it's Odin because we are currently connected to Odin. And you can also, for example, start in server mode, which is a mode to prevent changes. Okay, so this mode, which I can show here, let me have a quick look. Server mode makes everything purple or pink. This actually prevents any change here, no matter what I do. Okay, this is actually like a live mode. So when you're live, you don't want people to make changes and to restart frames or whatsoever, so you can make a server mode. Okay. So the intercom configuration, I know if we make changes, it will erase the configuration. In options, there is a lot of options you can do. That is, yeah, generally for the whole intercom. So if you have, for example, Unicode alphas, you can enable it in here. If you want to split the output and input alphas, you can also enable it here. If you want to make more setup pages, because the key panels, for example, automatically have 4 pages, you can make more pages. Also here, when you type something and you press test, you get the maximum number you can reach, which is 15 in this case for paging. But also, for example, key labels and how many labels you can create per key panel and so on. Okay. As I said, it has a lot of options. In this dialog window, it's really a matter of just reading what the option is giving, because this is already clarified by text. For now, I press cancel because I don't want to make changes and restart. As we are now connected for the first time, and it's a Odin. Odin is slightly different than ADAM and ADAM. ADAM and ADAM works by modular cards, which you can program in port allocations here to program which port or which card takes care of which ports. But in the Odin, you can program each port separately. For example, to function as an AIO, a 4-wire, a 2-wire, Avon, or Omnio/Dante. Please note that an Omnio port can also speak Dante and AES67. Behind that, we can see physical connections. So we can see the physical ports, for example, for the 4-wire in this case. We get triangles here because it already exists in this configuration. So once you accidentally program a duplicate channel, you will get the warning straight after that. If you have a multi-frame setup, you also have a drop-down menu on the top here where you can select each frame to be configured. Okay. Then, if you have a multi-frame setup, you can also use frame mapping table, where you can configure multiple frames and configure which frame is frame 1 and which frame is frame 2, and so on. And later on, we come with an update where we support Odin redundancy. That means that there is an Odin inactively running with the system, and the inactive frame becomes active once a frame has been failed. And you have 2 options in there. You can do a manual takeover or intelligent takeover. And this is something you can also program here in the frame mapping table. This is coming with a software version from Odin, and the redundancy of Odin it comes with a licensing as well. So you need to purchase the license to support this functionality.
But only for the redundant backup Odin. And we're going to show this at the IBC fully installed. So for later.
It's definitely a cool feature that I can recommend to everyone who's working with a multi-frame setup, or even for one frame it will work. It will completely take over the existing Odin. Okay, so that about setting up AZedit.
I need to add something to that. Yep. Not complete. It only takes over the IP settings of the Odin. So if you're using some analog points, then the backup will not work on the analog and the party line. So it's only for the IP channels.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is the setup for AZedit and for the intercom in short. So now we can continue programming the resources of the whole intercom system. That means programming names, which we say alphas, or even programming keys. So let's start at the beginning. I already briefly said it. We give names to our resources in the system. So that is named alphas. Alphas, if we press this icon here, or we just go here in alphas, we can program every resource we have, going from port to party line, IFBs, specialist, name it, we can give it a name. So we can recognize it in the system, but also we can program this on the key of a key panel, so you can literally read out what it is meant to be. So if we go to alphas and then ports, we can see alpha size 4. I already briefly explained that we can also split the input and output. If you don't have that option selected, then the output and input will be exactly the same. If you want to see more alphas, we can go back into preferences, alphas, and we can show all sizes. That means also 4, 6, and 8 characters, but also 8 Unicode if we want to. And here we can also select what our preferred option is. So if we don't select all sizes, but only select 8 here and apply, then we can see here on the top, it's changing to 8. Of course, please note that the changes you make here is not automatically set to your key panel. So even if you say, I would like to use 8 character alphas, it doesn't mean that the whole system will use 8 character alphas. You can program this in the menu of the key panel. Then the last option here, the suppress default alphas, which I think is a very useful option, because any alpha that is programmed by default as a N0 whatever port number, if you press this suppress, that means that in any configuration, you cannot find anything with a default name. So you need to have given it a name in order to see it. So let me make an example so you can see what this option is doing as well. We program this first option Sven. We call the second one Nico, and we call the third one John. Oh, it didn't take John. Okay. So we gave it 3 names. And then we go back to KPs, which is the main screen. And if we click the drop down, we can only see the 3 names that exist in the system. We don't see any other name. And the same counts for any programming of the key. If we now go back to preferences and we deselect suppress, press OK, we can see all the port numbers listed alphabetically.
Especially if you have 1,000 ports, it's a big list, so it helps you a lot. Yep. And again, if you start like this with the 4, 6, and 8 characters, and possibly the Unicode in 8 turned on as well, for Cyrillic or katakana or the Russian style, that makes your life much easier. I have seen a lot of customers starting with 4 in default and then changing the key panel to a 6 or an 8 character key panel, as you have to do that through the menu. Or if you have an old KP12 key panel that is default on 4, and then you change that key panel to a new KP series key panel and you want to have it 6 or 8. And by the way, 4 characters is 1 line, 6 characters is 1 line, but 8 characters is 2 times 4. So 4 and 4 below. Yeah, then you have to change the naming again from default if you change from 4 to 6. So the best way is always to start with show all alphas, as Sven here demonstrated. That's the best start.
Then also on the left side, where we just selected the drop down with the names, we can decide to either alphabetically sort the drop down, or we sort it by number. If we sort it by number, we can see that port 1 is Sven, port 2 is Nico, port 3 is John. So this is a very useful option as well. If you recognize the port numbers or you know the port numbers out of your head. Okay, so we select our preferred option, no matter what that will be. And we are ready to program all the alphas for your whole intercom. Currently, these are the port alphas. As we select this arrow, or even in here in the alpha menu, we can program also alphas for party line, IFBs, IFB specialists, input and outputs, isolations, UPLs, and so on. A key point here is if we make changes, they exist yellow. The same as last week, I demonstrated an IP edit. If you make changes, they will be shown as yellow. That means we made a change. This was the change in the system, but it's not yet activated. That means that the system doesn't recognize your change yet. The change is only visible here in your AZedit at the moment. Here there is an option to send it to the intercom, but not yet activated, only sending it. Then we have activate, which if we press it immediately, it will ask you to send. And then you can also show individual changes, or you can see the port numbers here. Most importantly here is that all the changes you do are not immediately written into Flash. That means that if I make changes and I shut down the frame within 5 minutes, then the configuration is lost after you boot it up again. There is an option called here request immediate save to Flash. That means if I'm at the end of the show, I make a last change for tomorrow morning, I want to upload the changes and then want to save it to Flash. So then tomorrow morning I can start with exactly the changes I did. Then that means I can send it and immediately shut down the frame. So then tomorrow morning, there is nothing missing. If you forget about this, you send the changes and you shut down the frame or the truck or wherever it's installed and the power is off, then the frame will lose this configuration if it's not online for another 5 minutes. Okay. Then also here we have the abort option in case we want to abort all the changes. And we have an undo button, or if we do press undo, we can also redo the option. For now, I would like to store the changes. So I press send and I press activate. I didn't check the writing into Flash because maybe within 5 minutes, I make another change. So then the processing of the unit is not consumed. If I make another change, it will combine all the changes within 5 minutes, wait another additional 5 minutes after the last change, and then send all changes immediately to Flash. Okay. So that about alphas. We can also make all the other resources with some alphas if we like. Let's start programming the key panel. If we have a key panel, this is your view. In here, we can select the port number. We can select which key panel or alpha we would like to change. We can see scroll enable, and scroll enable actually allows you to view destinations and also assign destinations locally on the panel itself. So that counts for point-to-points, so to key panels or other devices, party lines, IFBs, specialists, input and outputs, UPLs, and isolations. But more about that later as well, where I will explain all those features. So basically in here, scroll enable, you allow other destinations to be searched locally on the device. Then also trunk, in case you want to use a trunk master and have a remote connection to another location, you can allow remote key panels to discover this destination or this port locally on their key panel. AZedit, allowing remote intercom systems to be discovering this port as a destination. So for example, I want to program a key that is from another location. I need to have the other location port to be enabled in AZedit, scroll enable. Then the last option here is the POP LCP. POP is our program assignment panel, and LCP is listen control panel, where the port can be visual in the IFB input scroll list. So if you have some IFBs that you want to modify, you can do that by enabling this option as well. That means that your POP panel, where you can modify this, or your LCP option, you can make the inputs of the IFBs different without using AZedit. Okay. Then next to that, we have key panel and port settings, where we have a drop down to configure different pages. If you have a key panel connected to it and it is detected by the system, you can see the model type here listed down below. If you're working offline and you already know which port will be connected there, in options, edit, we can select what key panel model will be used in this location. So to give you an example, if we use a 5032 on the 8th character, we say done, we can see here KP 5032. Right now we are working as an offline mode because there is no KP connected. But in auto detect, what was the default option in the edit menu, if this is listed here, it can display what device is connected there.
Yeah, and by the way, the characters, you need to set the key panel to the character mode. So you can program the 5032 in 4, 6, 8 and Unicode 8 characters, but you have to program that, and then the panel will completely reboot to the mode that you want, and then you see it as it is right now in the display.
Yeah, correct. So besides here now, I can put it back to default, which is auto detect. We have a default view, which shows the setup page or by panel type. So if we have a 5032, you have more keys and also a up row and a down row, which we could see here. Let me connect back. We have a setup page 1, setup page 2, but no setup page 3, 4, or whatsoever, because there is no expansion panel used or connected. We can also use an extension panel like virtually, which you can enable on the key panel itself, and then you can also use page 3 and 4. To configure page 3 without an extension panel, without a virtual panel, you can program it separately here by selecting different pages. If we, for example, select, let me make a good example here, the Romeo bell pack 4 character, and I say default view by panel type, I press done, I can only see 4 keys. So that allows me not to make any programming mismatch with the device, because I cannot program a 5th key. I can only program the different pages. So if I press edit, I can select page 2. Sorry, this one is not existing. So I can select page 2, press done, and I jump to page 2.
So this is directly what you see on the Romeo bell pack, the talk and the listen key, the 4 of the bell pack, that you really see it as it is.
Yep. So this is per port to be configured. We can also show type set by user or report by intercom. That means the type here automatically detected. Right now I keep it with user, and I can also restrict the setup paging. Now, maybe a trick, because configuring this edit set by panel type for every port is maybe a little bit too much. If we press Ctrl-Shift-Tab, it will ask me now to change this back to setup, but that means all ports. If I say yes, it goes back to the setup pages where it shows 15 or 16 keys. If I press Ctrl-Shift-Tab again, it will ask me to switch all ports to panel type. If I press yes, it puts every port to the panel type. You see, port 2 has no panel type yet configured manually because we are not having any device connected at the moment. We can program, for example, a 4016 here. If I press done, we can see the 4016, where you have 14 keys and two function keys next to it.
I want to add something to it. Right now we're working on an Odin, but I know also a lot of customers that are working with the old classic ADAM or ADAM CS. Still the AZedit works with it, but in the old days you needed a data driver per 8 ports. So you cannot mix 4, 6, and 8 characters on one data driver. The new generation of Odin, Zeus, etc., they have an individual data driver per port, and you can mix 4, 6, and 8 characters around the whole matrix. So be careful if you connect to an old ADAM with AIO8 or an ADAM CS with AIO8 cards, then you need to split the 4 for the first 8 and then the other 8, for instance, the 6 or the 8 characters. If any questions, let me know and I can give you more details about that. That is for the customers with older systems.
So then next to edit, we have also advanced tab where you can program additional features. For example, enable the tone. Instead of using audio testing, you can also enable a tone on a destination where you hit the listen key of that port and you can hear a tone. We have program feature called keypanel privacy, which means if I enable this one, then I can speak to, for example, as port 1 to Nico, but John, if he hits the listen key, cannot hear me unless I hit the talk key to John as well. So privacy means that the listener can only listen to the port if the talker is indeed talking to that destination. Okay. Then you can also restrict the dial out for the telephone interfaces. We can enable key labels. We also have a do not interrupt option. We can make priority volumes in calling. We can enable mirroring of a port, which requires a license. If you have a control license, you can also mirror another key panel. That means it's completely duplicating that port. Also with the volume changes with audio, name it. For example, if someone complains that the audio is not working and you mirror his key panel or her key panel, you can see exactly the same as the other user can see. So you don't need to walk down to the other building or other studio or whatsoever. You can do that from your own spot. If the port is not a key panel, but used for SIP, you can also program your SIP port numbers here. This is at the moment only working when you have a SIP connected to the intercom. And then last but not least is the enable voice activation. You can enable Vox on this port, which you can also use in combination with UPL statements. Okay, so I enabled a couple of features. You can see the icons are also listed on the top here. If I disable them, the items are gone. So by enabling items, and you can see icons below the edit, you can see there are some additional features applied to this port. Next to edit, we have a audio icon. If we select this, we can modify the crosspoint listen for point-to-points. We can select to which crosspoint it is. Also for party lines, and we can modify the inputs and outputs. If we have the audio licensing, we can also modify the thresholds of it. So the minimum and maximum volume levels of the speaker, the headset, matrix in, and aux in.
Very useful that people don't mute it completely.
Yeah. So this actually indeed prevents that people can change the knob completely to 0 and mute themselves, and then complain maybe later on that they have no audio. So you can prevent that in here, but that requires an audio license. The one for the control license is the third icon here. It's disabled because we have no device connected with a control license at the moment. But if you select this option, you can see the whole key panel menu. So basically, if you have the key panel in front of you, you press menu. Everything you can program in there, you can see back here. The best part of this is if you're going to use multi-channels. If you're going to use multi-channels, you're going to use mixing. It's better to do that visually because then you have a better indication where every channel is going rather than in the menu of the key panel. And then on top of the control is of course the mirroring that I have explained earlier.
Yeah.
Then on the right side we have the port status. It's currently connected as Omnio, and we can see if the local input or output is in use, which is not because we have no key panel connected at the moment. This is on the top of the key panel configuration. Now on the bottom, we can program listen keys and talk keys. And we can program them in several ways. We can do typing, but we can also do right click, change assignment. We can, for example, connect John here, and we can also right click in the gray area and express show grid. If I make this a little bit bigger, we can see a grid of point-to-point, party line, IFBs, and so on, where I can drag and drop the ports that I want to use. Okay. Now, these are just by names. And to simplify your life and configuration here, we have some shortcuts here. If we program talk keys, the listen keys can be programmed as well. For example, manually typing. The other options are auto follow, auto mute, auto listen, AT, auto table, and so on. In the help menu, if you open the help menu and we program AT or AF, you can also discover the shortcuts, the abbreviations. The AF means that it automatically follows what is configured here as a talk key. Auto mute will automatically mute the talk key. Auto listen will automatically listen with the talk key. And AT, auto table, will automatically follow the listen source of IFB. But I will explain that a little bit later in more detail. On top of the talk key, but also the listen key, we have a D and we have an R. D means delatched. That prevents that someone hits the talk key, walks away, and leaves the talk key on. That allows you to hold the talk key in order to talk, and as soon as you release the key, it's released.
Push to talk.
Push to talk indeed. And then on top of that, or on the bottom here, we have restrict, which means that if a user locally searches or assigns new destinations, you can restrict the user of making changes locally in the key panel on this key, as well for talk as for listen. Now, if we want to program it to the whole area, we can use shift, and automatically from where you click, everything to the right is selected. If you select Alt, it goes the other way around. Okay, so Alt is going to the left, Shift is going to the right. Okay.
This restriction is very useful because if you make a change locally on your key panel, because you're not restricted, you're saving it on the matrix. As in many cases, you don't want that for the operator that will follow. So it's always advised to restrict the keys and keep some keys open so they can flexibly change it. We'll come to that later. Still yellow, as you can see.
So the next option is party lines. If we open party lines, maybe we all know that from 4-wire time as well, where you can have a conference call. Everyone is connected to each other. Digitally, because nowadays we have IP products as well, we can create exactly the same environment. So we can create a party line. In this case, it's called PL01 as default, but we can give it an alpha down here, as I have demonstrated as well. And we can name it anything we want with 4, 6, or 8 characters. A party line means that if a key panel intelligent device hits the key here, in this case key 9, he or she will join the party line. Party line is also useful for 4-wire devices. With 4-wire devices who have non-intelligent data connected to the intercom cannot always talk. You must make them a forced talker. So in the right side here, we have party line talker, party line listener. We have no talker, that means we remove the talk functionality and the listen functionality. But please note that it doesn't disable someone from talking to the party line or listening, okay? That means the option here, party line talker, will be removed when we click this option, okay? For intelligent devices, I cannot recommend people being forced as a talker in the party line. Why not? Because people have no indication that they are forced talker in this party line. That means the microphone is always open within this group call, okay? For 4-wire devices, for example, CCUs or other devices on 4-wire, it is useful if they have a physical switch to enable the microphone, yes or no. Then you allow them always to talk and they physically decide when they open the microphone, yes or no. For the listener, I mean, you can program a key panel for force listening into a party line. That means they're always listening to the conference call, not missing a single message, but talking I would not suggest for an intelligent device. Now on the left side, we have the same options like on the key panel. We can make this party lines call enabled as well for local use, trunk use, or even trunked AZedit programming on the other locations. We can do latching, we can remove it, and we can do tallies. And tally means that if there is a talk, someone talking in the party line, it starts blinking in your key panel and means indicating someone is speaking there. So notifying you that you can listen to it as well locally as for trunked systems. Now, these are basically the party lines, not much to discuss over here. More to the right, we have IFBs, interruptible fallback. In interruptible fallbacks, IFBs, we can program, for example, in-ear pieces that get automatically feed from an external audio program source. But at the same time, when you want to speak to it, you can cut the feed or dim the volume of the feed to speak to that person. If the talent want to talk back, you can also use this, which is called a listen source. So if we double click on the IFB, we can completely program this IFB, which comes with a port where the external audio source is. Okay, that can be from any audio source with the feed to the in-ear piece. Then we have the output, which is the intercom output port. In other words, that's the talent itself. Then we can decide if we mute the feed or if we dim it to a certain volume. We can also put the output gain here, linked to the output port. We can make tallies of it, and we can program the listen source. And this is where I said listen source comes with auto table, because we have an input, external audio source, not that difficult. Output means the in-ear piece. We follow what a person is listening to. But then the listen source, which can be a microphone, for example, to the side of the t-shirt or sweater or whatsoever, that can be a different port. And because we are dealing here with 3 ports, we have simplified your life with auto table. So the listen on top of the IFB means that it automatically listens not to the output port, but to the listen source linked to this IFB. So this IFB 01 has a listen source somewhere connected. If we go back to the KPs here on Sven, I apologize. Oh, it's removed. If we program IF01 and we have auto table, that means that hitting the listen key will automatically follow the path of the IFB listen source of the IFB programmed in your talk key. Okay. The listen source here in the IFB, let me jump back, allows you to have a 2-way communication with your talent. And it requires not the mix minus, but the unmixed microphone signal to the talent. So then at least you can program 2-way communication. Latching, I mean, it's the same as all the other latchings to allow you or disallow you push to talk. And you can also program the IFB to be scroll enabled locally or trunked as well. For the POP 5032, this one allows you to be discoverable within the POP 5032. And that device, 5032 POP, allows you to modify the IFB outputs and inputs, but also listen source directly on the panel itself. Not a key panel, but the POP panel. Okay. Next to IFBs, I skipped the IFB SL because SL stands for specialist. I immediately jumped to a normal specialist. In the specialist, we can see all the ports. These ports can be assigned to a group here. And this actually differs from party line because party line is a conference call. Everyone talking in there where everyone can hear it and everyone can listen to what everyone is saying. A specialist is different because we have one port communicating to multiple destinations, but if someone replies, it's a point-to-point. So this actually allows you, for example, to do a countdown where a camera is saying or someone else is maybe stating, oh, I'm not ready because something is going on. And then the director or assistant or anyone else who was giving the message know about, something is going on in the background, so he can calculate that into the show.
Only, of course, if you connect your cameras, your CCUs,
Yep.
point to point. If you have your CCUs connected to a distribution amplifier, full wire, then of course it's one party line.
Yeah. So this option is different compared to party line. That's the main message. And the same also here with IFBs. You can combine multiple IFBs into one key or one alpha, so you can talk to multiple destinations without losing too much. Then we have relays. I want to skip that. The same for inputs. These are the inputs and outputs. Relays is a different word for outputs. So in case you're using a physical input output or general purpose input output, you can program it in here. I want to skip to isolation, which is a useful option to have a personal talk with someone. Isolation means if I hit the ISO key to this person, I will isolate that person from any incoming audio. That means the person being isolated because I pressed the key is not hearing anything else. I can also ISO myself. That means isolate myself and the person, the destination, into a personal call where no one is being bothered. If I program this in the key, I want one thing to be 100% sure clear here. If I program change assignment, ISO, this automatically comes with delatched. You can disable this, but it's very dangerous because if I hit the talk key to an isolated call and I forget the talk key, then that person is isolated, not getting any other audio than me. So please note that the ISO should come with latching disabled, okay? In here you can program who is the isolated person. That means if I program Nico and I say done, I can still have Nico next to it. And I can, for example, make a label back here, key label, and I can say personal. Okay, personal call with Nico, for example. Then the other option is I will skip a couple of them because that is more advanced programming as well. I want to go immediately to XPTs, crosspoints, where you can program certain crosspoints, but also review crosspoints by double clicking or pressing inspect. This allows you to view the inputs and outputs of a certain call, if the crosspoint is open or closed, and so on. Also in here, you can force people to either talk or listen to a port. In this case, we program port Sven to listen, to listen to myself. But for example, always talking to Nico. At the same time, we can also inhibit people. So if Sven is not allowed to talk to John, we can say inhibit. Then with this option, Sven can hit the talk key, he can find the destination in the scroll enable, but he's never able to send audio over this crosspoint. It's inhibited. If you want to release it, you want to remove the option, you can hit release and the option is gone.
Very useful when there's a stress situation that you can remotely make some changes.
Yeah. Then further onwards, we have the gains. We can select the cross point, the point-to-point gains, the party line gains, or the input-output gains. It's exactly the same settings we have seen on the key panel overview. If you hit OK, you can hit the list, or you can modify the listen gains of a certain port. On the left side, you select the port, and on the right side, you select the port where it's listening to, where it should have modified gains.
By the way, if you connect this matrix to a level control panel, LCP 102, for instance, and you select the real-time changes, you real-time change the input and the output gain. And that's very useful for sports, for instance, when you have an incoming telephone line, it's way too loud. You just adjust it with the panel instead of going into the software, find the gain, find the port, and change it, because when it's live, every second counts.
Any modification done, if I set gain, for example, on myself, a little bit more, I set more to Nico as well, and less to John, and I hit show non-unity only, means it will display only the modified gains of port 1. So any other gain that is default, which is 0, is not being displayed. So it gives you more overview if you have a big system as well. Further, because this is a very big program, and I'm sorry for that, I cannot explain every option within an hour, but I want to go through a couple of other very important options, which is mainly in status. We can view all the port statuses in here, also enhanced statuses, for example, power-ups and requests as well. We can see the error counts, descriptions, name it. Further in status, we can see software versions for the key panels, for the GPIOs, but also master controllers, which is very important as well to stay up to date, and also in case you have errors and you need technical support. It's very important to know what software versions are applied to everything. Additionally, we have alarms in AZedit, where we can see all the alarms, same as the bottom right here, where we can display all the alarms given by the intercom. And then the last couple of options, and then we can maybe go to the question and answer part, is in system miscellaneous. We have a couple of options that may be useful to you for a new system. First of all, we have key panel colors, where we can program default colors for ports, party lines, and so on. We can also give a specific port. For example, Sven, we apply more greenish color to it. We can program this as well. And also for other options, not just the ports, also party lines. So it's more clear for a user, maybe in priority or something like that.
And don't underestimate, a lot of people are colorblind. So the red and the green color is gray for them. You can change it, for instance, to a black background and white alphas. It happens in practice, and it will help you.
It's the same for the miscellaneous colors, talk and listen keys here. We can also program other colors in here, for example, purple, which is very beautiful. However, this is system-wide. So any change we make here, as well in key assignment, as well in miscellaneous colors, as well in function types, is system-wide. It's not per key panel or per port, it's for the whole system. So if we configure purple for talk key indicator, then please note that everyone on the whole system will see purple when someone hits talk. And that's only on the top of the label, of course. Next to colors, we can also display tallies. Tallies is, like I explained, the text that is flashing. You can also define for what it is. For example, an incoming call, we have a couple of them already pre-programmed. It's flashing for 10 seconds. You can program this for longer or less. You can also program what it should do. For example, give a different background color in flashing state with, for example, the color red as a text and say there is a call incoming. If I press OK, you can see that now when someone is making a call to someone, it will display black with red text call. So it's very noticeable that someone is calling. You can also add noises to it or, well, some chimes to it. We have a couple of system chimes and we have user chimes where you can upload user chimes to it. Please note that the duration you configure here cannot be pressed away by the user. So if I say 5 minutes and I put a chime on it, it means 5 minutes long there's a chime going off on that port, and that's not very friendly as well. So please make note of this. Okay, you can also program tallies yourself and use it in combination with UPLs for different purposes.
Why don't you explain UPL?
I can display UPL a little bit later as well, but we're running short in time. So
but we do not have that many questions because we already answered the question.
First, I want to go through miscellaneous, where we can also program screensavers for the key panels. We can enter a company name, for example, say RTS Intercoms, and then once there is a screensaver popping up, it will display this text. Please note that again, this is system-wide. Every setting we do in system is system-wide. It's not per port. Miscellaneous, we can also add passwords. That means that if we want to restrict operators of going into the menu, we can enter 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can enter a different password in the service menu, 5, 6, 7, 8. This can go up to, out of my head, 40 characters. Maybe I'm wrong, but it can go at least very, very large. And please note that this is for the entire system again. The menu password can also be blank, where only a service password is applied. And service is maybe the most important menu for the key panel because that's also the menu where you program IP addresses and so on. Menu, I mean, if you want to restrict people, you can do that. You can completely close it, but then please note that any restriction you apply is also making it less user-friendly for quick changes. Further in miscellaneous, we also have the key panel configuration. If you have the control control license, you can also upload the key panel configuration for all the key panel ports. The same for the control license here. You can download the configuration of a key panel and upload it to a key panel or multiple key panels if you want. That stores the local configuration of the key panel. Now the last option indeed is UPLs. This is a little bit more advanced option, so to say, but it's very useful to many many subjects, because if you want to do something special in the system or you want to make an action about after a trigger, you can enable your trigger point here. The input is your trigger. What should be triggered or when it can be triggered and what it will do. So if I say, based on the UPL statement, but it can also be a talk key, if I hit a certain talk key on a port or something else, then what should happen? Most importantly on the UPL is reading the description. For example, if I open this UPL statement, then load file. If I hit this key, statement is true, then load file from the disk and send it to the intercom. So if we have a morning show, afternoon show, and maybe night show programmed, and we hit this on a key here, let me go back to, where is it? that's not going that well. My computer is crashing at the moment, or my AZedit is crashing. Apologize for that. It's probably because it's trying to scan for the file that doesn't exist. If we hit changes here for a key, we can also add UPLs to it. So we can also trigger based on talk keys. We can also program a UPL by a talk key in here, so you don't sacrifice a talk key physically. But please note, if you make a UPL with load file, which is very dangerous a demonstration at this moment or explanation, it doesn't ask you, are you sure? If you hit the key, it will just load the file and it will reboot the whole intercom. But there are also options to inhibit outputs or force certain talk keys or listen keys based on a trigger. Any output action created here can only exist once in the whole system. So if you want to make the output valid for multiple inputs, you can make a domino effect. You can make UPL statement 1. If that's true, then do this. You can also leave the output action blank, where a UPL statement is not doing much, only stating true or false, and based on that you can make a domino effect.
Very nice practical UPL statement is, for instance, in theaters. When the telly is on, you're live, the GPI from that one is on. Don't switch to speaker, but switch to the headset.
Yep.
So you don't hear the announcement on the speaker on stage. Small things. Or if I hit the talk key, close the GPI for the radio, so it goes into transmit mode.
Yep.
Very practical. Or if you hit this key, open the door of the OB truck or lock it. We use it for big brothers. For instance, sorry, when you go from the morning session to the afternoon session, yes, and by hitting 2 keys and a GPI foot switch over to the afternoon session. Things like that are possible. And last one, for instance, a very popular one, is if you have seen during live events, we are getting excited. We are gaining the gains where we crosspoint go up, and after a while, it's like a discotheque in your G. Then in the morning, you want to go to a neutral level of audio. So what's always very wise that around 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, you go to default setting. That all can be programmed in your UPLs, and it's very useful.
Now, I didn't explain 2 maybe very important topics. One of them is logging. We can enable logging. We can also view logging. This automatically logs information like alarms and so on when AZedit is opened. If you are connected to AZedit or via AZedit to ADAM or ADAM, you can also configure logging here. That means that you need a serial connection to ADAM or ADAM. And then if you enable logging and configure this PC as main computer for the logging, it stores the logging in master control card up to a certain amount, and as soon as you connect for the first time again with AZedit, it downloads the log files from the master control to your PC. And then maybe the most important part is file, save as, and partial save. As soon as we have a configuration made that we want to store, we can store the entire configuration onto your PC or to a USB stick. Or you can make a partial save where maybe some ports are very important to you that may change from time to time, and you can select what exactly you want to store in this file. As well for keypanel configuration, port configuration, IFBs, name it. Actually, everything can be selected in here. We also have an advanced select, where if we say advanced select, you can make, for example, only changes or restricted options to be stored. Now, once you made a configuration, we have to load the configuration in case you want to make a change. But then again, this will change the whole intercom and also cause a reboot. So all your key panels will be disconnected for a time. So this is only about changing the whole intercom system with completely different settings. Once we made changes, we activated it. Same counts for loading a file. If we load a file, basically the intercom notices that everything has changed and we must activate it before it's pushed to the whole system.
Maybe interesting to mention that Sven designed a very nice logging tool that is available, but then you need to contact the field support department. You go to the rtsintercoms.com website, and there you see the contact details of your field support. Send us an email. We can send you a logging tool where you can do your logging if you have issues. Also the help file, Sven is creating a lot here. Sven found a solution to get the help file working. There are some Windows versions where help doesn't work, and with this tool you can get the help file working. And is the help file already, because you completely did a factory default on AZedit this morning, is your help file already installed?
Yep.
Yes? Okay. So you can click with the help file to whatever functionality setting in your AZedit, and it tells you. So one of the questions was, what is auto table, auto follow, auto listen, auto mute, and so on? If you go into the help file, you can find those acronyms completely in a list. You can also print, here it is, you can also print that out.
So yeah, I would like to thank you all for participating, and hopefully see you next time.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for joining us.
See you next time. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.